I don't know about all you guys, but I think I need an NAP after all that. That was exhausting. It's very good to be back with you this afternoon, this evening. This morning we considered the deep human needs that we have and how talking to people about those deep human needs can be another way of approaching evangelism. That rather than the typical apologetics, evidences for the Bible, evidences for God's existence, that maybe in our culture right now, because of how much people are oriented around their feelings, we should ask the question, does the Bible appeal to people based on deep emotional needs? And if you can help people understand that it's in their best interest that Christianity is true, and their heart wants to believe it because it gives them a sense of meaning, like we looked at this morning, more than any other worldview, their heart may start to want it to be true. Tonight we're going to be looking at our need for hope. And I'll just remind us that the text that we started all of these lessons with is John chapter 10, verse 10, where it says, "The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly." If you make anything other than Jesus the one that you follow, you will experience things being stolen, killed, and destroyed from your life. And I think all of us can testify in our own walk with the Lord and without the Lord in the different seasons that we've lived throughout our life, that when we've not followed the Lord, we felt like a lot of things were being taken from us. And that's what Jesus says is going to be the case if you don't follow Him. But if you do follow Him genuinely, and not just for appearance sake, but genuinely, you will understand abundant life. And so we've noticed from this morning that if we compare the biblical worldview to the hired hand that steals and kills and destroys to the biblical worldview when it comes to our need for meaning, that the Bible's worldview is going to give us a sense of meaning that no other worldview can give us. But another need that we have is a need for hope. All of us live in every present moment based on what we believe about the future. If we have a bleak outlook about the future, we're going to be bleak in the moment. If we have a bright outlook about the future, then we're going to feel very bright about the present. When I talk about the future and our hope, I'm not talking about what you hope might happen in this country a year from now, or what you hope might happen in your career 6 months from now. I'm talking about what's going to happen when you die. This is a deep question that a lot of people would not like to think about. But if you're a Christian, you're allowed to think about this deeply because we have the best hope that any worldview could offer us. If we were to think about this, what are some evidences in our culture that our culture has become less hopeful? What would be some evidences of that? I think maybe one would be declining birth rates. There's more people interested in having dogs. Have you seen people with the bumper sticker, dog mom? If you have that, I'm not making fun of you directly. But you're not a mom. You're a dog owner. And if you like your dog, that's great. That's fine. But whenever there's a society that's less interested in having children, that's always a sign of decreasing hope. You ever heard the phrase before that if the church ain't crying, then it's dying? I like hearing the babies crying during this service. It means that it's a vibrant church with a church, and I got 4 kids, so I know what that's all like. Sort of. I'm the one that's up there. My wife is the one having to. Anyways, all right. Another evidence of hopelessness is increasing suicide rates. I have known people who have committed suicide. I have friends who know people that have committed suicide, but that is a clear indication of a lack of hope. And then increasing SSRI rates, that is selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, antidepressants, things like that. I'm not saying that everybody that's on that is on it because they're sinning in some way. That's not my point in bringing that up. But when there is an increase in society of these things, that would be an evidence of a lack of hope. So whatever our secular worldview friends might tell us about how to find hope, whatever they're suggesting is clearly not working. But like we did this morning, we want to start out with the question, how would a secular person seek to find hope? If you don't have God and you don't serve God, it's not like you would say, well, I just have a hopeless life. No, they would still say that I find my hope in this, or I find my hope in that. What I want to share with you are two main ways that secular people try to find hope in their life without a belief in God. And I'm going to be quoting from a book by a woman named Catherine Osmond. She wrote a book called Grace Without God. And the book is her journey of leaving religion and trying to find grace and hope and meaning in her life without God. And so look at some of these quotes from her. So the first way that secular people try to find hope is that if I know that I've left the world a better place, then that's my hope. I want to make somebody smile. I want to make somebody's life better after I've passed on, and that's my hope. And look what she says about this. She says, we believe in making the world a better place. We believe in evidence over faith. We believe in reason as a way to address problems. We believe in helping others because that makes the world better for everybody. And in the book, she refers to this as secular humanism. If you know somebody who believes in Marxism, that means that they believe in the teachings of Karl Marx. If you know somebody who believes in Buddhism, they believe in the teachings of the Buddha. What does it mean to be a humanist? It means that we believe human beings have the ability to solve all of our problems, that human beings, if we put everything together, we don't need religion, but we put all of our minds together, we can create world peace, we can end world hunger, we can create all of these solutions to all of these bad problems that have plagued the world. And so that's one of the hopes that a secular person would have. I want to try to make some kind of positive contribution to the world. And clearly a Christian would as well, but our contributions last into eternity. But I don't want to get ahead of myself with that. What are some problems with this worldview? That we just want to make everything better for everybody. There's a couple of problems with this. Number one is that it would be naive to believe that you can actually solve some of these problems of corruption in the world. I don't know if you've ever heard of H.G. Wells, but he wrote a lot of different kinds of books. One of them being The Time Machine. They made the War of the Worlds, Time Machine. They made movies out of both of those, actually. But before World War II, he wrote a book called A Short History of the World. He made a longer version of it that was over 1,000 pages, and people said, that was really great, but can you shorten it? And so before World War II, but after World War I, he wrote this. And by the way, before I put this up, you know that they didn't call it World War I when it was happening because they weren't anticipating a sequel? So it was called the Great War at the time. But right after the Great War, World War I, he said this, and I know that font may be small, but I'll still read this so you can at least listen to it. Can we doubt that presently our race will more than realize our boldest imaginations, that it will achieve unity and peace, that it will live, the children of our blood and lives will live in a world made more splendid and lovely than any palace or garden that we know, going on from strength to strength in an ever-widening circle of adventure and achievement? What man has done, the little triumphs of his present state, and all this history, we have told, form but the prelude to the things that man has yet to do. What's H.G. Wells' perspective on the future? That we've gotten all of our killing out of the way, we've gotten all of our fighting out of the way, and now that we've done this with the Great War, the future of mankind is going to be great, it's going to be a splendid utopia, all of these things. And then 23 years go by, and World War II has ended. Just ask yourself, H.G. Wells, who is saying, my worldview is we can make the world a better place, 23 years go by with him believing this. World War II happens where there's more photography and videos, and people can see the horrors that happened during that war. What is this guy's worldview doing when World War II happens? It's imploding on itself. So he wrote another book shortly before he died, and the book is titled A Mind at the End of Its Tether. Can you imagine why he would have titled it that? Look what he said 23 years later. He says, the cold-blooded massacres of the defenseless, the return of deliberate and organized torture, mental torment, and fear to a world from which such things had seemed well-nigh banished, has come near to breaking my spirit altogether. Homo sapiens, as he has been pleased to call himself, is played out. You see what happened to him? For a while, he held this view that we're going to make everything better, and then another terrible thing happens in the world. You know, for young people that go, I'm going to change my banner on social media, and I'm going to let everybody know that I'm with this thing or that thing, and I'm all about this social movement. We're going to change everything. You just wait for another really bad thing to happen and then realize that you're not going to make a huge difference in making the world a better place. In fact, what does the Bible teach in Ecclesiastes 1:15? What is crooked cannot be made straight, and what is lacking cannot be counted. You know what the world can do? The world can define what's crooked. I remember when I was doing a campus study at WKU one time, and I had asked the students there, how many of you taken philosophy, I asked about philosophy classes, and like 2 hands went up. But I asked, how many of you taken psychology classes? And like everybody's hand goes up. And I said, from those psychology classes that you've taken, how many of you have learned about some things in your life that aren't right? Hands stay up. Okay, how many of you have learned about how to actually solve those problems? Hands go down. The world can tell you what's wrong with the world. The world can diagnose what's crooked. The world can diagnose what's lacking. But it says also in this passage that you're not going to fix all of these things. And sure, there can be people that have made contributions here and there and made some things better for a group of people, and I'm not saying it's wrong to do that, but what I'm saying is this, that if you don't believe that there's a God and there's eternal life, everything that you're doing is eventually going to crash and burn and be gone. Imagine it this way. Imagine that you're on an airplane, and just for imagination's sake, the airplane, both engines are gone, it was a bird strike, and you're coasting, and you know that you got 7 minutes until it crashes into a bunch of mountains. And you're like, well, you know, I got 7 minutes, so I'm going to go to the bathroom. And you go to the bathroom, you pull in or out, you never know, and you get it right. And then you go in, and then you lock it, and then the light doesn't turn on, and you go, seriously? This is what my last 7 minutes got to be like? So you open up the thing, and then you go out to you can't say stewardess because that's sexist now. You have to, is it steward human, whatever it would be. You go talk to the steward human and you say, hey, steward human, the light's not working in the bathroom. Can we please get this fixed? And the steward human will look at you and go, why do you want to make this plane a better place when it's all going to crash and burn anyways? Anything that you do to make a contribution, well, it might be nice for the moment, is not going to have any kind of ultimate lasting impact. So why do you care about that? So if you're somebody who thinks you're going to just dramatically make some big change in the world, you're naive. You haven't seen some really bad traumatic thing like a World War II happen. But there's another problem with this. Remember when we talked this morning about how if your worldview doesn't apply or it cannot apply to everybody in the world, it's a bad worldview? I like this quote from Timothy Keller. Look what Timothy Keller said about this. Imagine how ludicrous it would have been to sit down with a group of early 19th century slaves and say, there will never be a judgment day in which wrongdoing will be put right. There is no future world and life in which your desires will ever be satisfied. This life is all there is. When you die, you simply cease to exist. Our only real hope for a better world lies in improved social policy. Now, with these things in mind, go out there, keep your head high, and live a life of courage and love. Don't give in to despair. How do you think that would land on a group of slaves in the 1800s? Do you think they'd go, you know what? I think we're done with this whole Jesus thing, and we like that a lot better. Obviously, we would hope for social change. But if a secular humanist comes along and says, we can just solve all these problems and it's all going to go away. By the way, if you've never heard of this book, Jesus and the Disinherited, you need to go buy that and read that book. Jesus and the Disinherited. It was written by a southern preacher from Georgia. His mom was a slave, and he became a preacher. He taught, I don't think he taught accurately about how to be saved and all of that, but he wrote this book, Jesus and the Disinherited, and it begins like this. Howard Thurman is sitting down with a man from India who's a Hindu. And this Hindu man is asking Howard Thurman, why would you adopt the religion of the very people who enslaved you? Because from the perspective of the man from India, it sure looks like you guys are just further submitting to your slave masters by even adopting the Jesus that they're telling you about. Have you ever wondered this question? Why did the slaves oftentimes convert to some form of Christianity? And the rest of the book is answering the Hindu man why so many black slaves in the United States adopted Christianity. You know what the argument of the book is? Is that Jesus was an oppressed minority. And that Jesus, even though we were being taught through the teeth of hypocritical people, there was something so utterly compelling about Jesus that we could look past the hypocrisy of the slave owners and realize how much of a treasure Jesus was. You want to try to rip Christianity away from those people? That's the first way that people try to find meaning in life, is I want to make the world a better place. And it's naive to think about, and it can't apply to everybody in the world. So here's another way that secular people have tried to find meaning in life, or hope in life, is that you just embrace death as a natural part of life. I'm going to show you some quotes that show this. This idea has been around for close to 40 years in our culture, especially where it's become more and more prominent. But it's in more Netflix shows. It's the messaging of even some Disney movies, and I'll quote one in just a moment. And remember the book by Catherine Osmond, Grace Without God? There's a part of the book near the end of the book where her daughter asks about what's happened to Grandma because Grandma has died. And Catherine goes to her window, and she's thinking about what the truth is in her worldview. And she doesn't have the courage to actually tell her daughter what she's thinking, but here's what she was thinking. Our bodies decompose, falling back into the earth, merging with all other matter that makes up our planet. In the future, our decomposed bodies might provide nutrients to the trees. Someone might hang a swing from one of those trees, or sit beneath the shade of its leafy branches, or make a painted horse from its wood. Can you imagine if we got all the kids back for VBS, and one of these kids has a loved one that just passes away and goes, what happens to them? They might feed a tree. Yay, VBS. You think all the kids are going to go, cool? In fact, Catherine Osmond, she goes on to say in that same page, I didn't want to scare her with the concept of our eventual oblivion. So she doesn't have the heart to even tell her daughter what her worldview says. So here's the secular view. We just have to accept that we're going to decompose, but here's the good news, everybody. You might feed a tree. And do you know what somebody might do with that tree? Is they might hang a swing from it. And a kid could play with the tree that you're feeding. Doesn't that sound like a great sense of, that just sounds, or let's just talk about Lion King for a second. In 1994, when this Mufasa is having his conversation with young Simba, everything you see exists together in a delicate balance. As king, you need to understand that balance and respect the creatures, from the crawling ant to the leaping antelope. All right, son? So respect all the animals. And his son has a really good question. Young Simba asks this, but Dad, don't we eat the antelope? Sure seems like, Dad, you're wrong about this. We eat those things. But his dad's got a good answer. Here's his good answer. Yes, Simba, but let me explain. When we die, our bodies become the grass, and the antelope eat the grass. And so we are all connected in the great circle of life, and we have the beautiful circle of life song and all of that sort of thing. So it's great because you die and you feed the grass, and then those things eat the grass. What's ironic about Mufasa, he dies in a canyon, and he doesn't feed any grass. He just gets trampled over. And so it doesn't even work out that well in the movie itself. But can you imagine, you're going to say, you know what, I'm done with Christianity. I'm done with God. And somebody goes, all right, I got a question for you. What's your hope after you die? I'm going to feed the grass. Like, this is literally what people try to convince themselves is something that's going to be good for them to think about. Here's some problems with this view. Number one, you have no control over your remains. If your hope is literally that you might feed a tree that somebody will hang a swing on, somebody might also take that tree and make a baseball bat out of it and start hurting people with it. Like, you literally can't control it. So, but this view says this is part of what you care about. And so that's one problem with this view. Another problem with this view is that there is no ultimate justice. What's going to happen with Stalin and Hitler and Mao Zedong and Genghis Khan? Look at this quote. No matter what you choose to believe or what good or evil actions you take in life, we all end exactly where we began, as stardust, like a drop of water falling back into the ocean. That, my friends, is the real horror. Do you want your worldview to say that there's no ultimate difference between Stalin and Jesus? Do you want your worldview to say that there's no difference between Mao and the Apostle Paul? Because if you're going to say that there is no God, there is no final judgment day, everybody gets buried and becomes stardust, and you're like a drop of water going back into the ocean, and if you're not horrified by that, you're not thinking deeply enough about it. But here's a third problem with this. Don't you think that we all sort of instinctively know that death is an enemy? When Samantha and I lived in San Diego, so my work schedule, I work between services on Sunday because it's already a work day, so I'll just work the whole day and try to get my Wednesday night class ready. And then I work until Thursday. And Thursday, my sermons have got to be printed out, and I take Friday and Saturday off. That's my weekend. And so our custom has been, as on my day off on Friday, we go to a coffee shop. So we went to this coffee shop in San Diego. And there was a woman that was sitting next to us, and we started talking, and we talked about religion and the Bible and all that. And she said, okay, this is really interesting because I'm a grief counselor at hospitals. And so I try to understand what different worldviews say about death so that I can comfort people as they're dying. And I said, okay, interesting. So what are some of the things that you've learned about other worldviews and what they say about death? And she said that every worldview tries to convince people that death is a beautiful, natural part of life, and it's just the way that the world works. And she said, what's the Christian worldview? And I sent her an email helping her understand that in the biblical worldview, death is an enemy. It's an intruder. 1 Corinthians 15, 25, and 26, for he, Christ, must reign until he has put all his enemies under his feet. The last enemy to be destroyed is death. Do you remember during COVID how there was like all the death counters on Fox and CNN and all the MSNBC, whatever, how many people have died? And as that number got higher and higher, did you know anybody that said, what a beautiful thing, that's just a natural part of life, look at all these people that have died? Nobody thought that. Because we all instinctively understand that the biblical worldview that says that death is an enemy kind of matches how we really feel about it. So to try to convince people that you die and you feed grass and you die and you feed trees, and to try to tell people that you should be okay with that and embrace that, we deeply know that there's something flawed about that perspective. So, what is the biblical approach to hope? Because in all the writings from atheists that I've read, those are the best things. I hope to leave the world a better place, and I get to feed trees and grass. What's the biblical approach to this? Number one, you get to be with the Lord. 1 Thessalonians 4, 16 and 17. For the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a cry of command, with the voice of the archangel and the sound of the trumpet of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. Then we who are alive, who are left, will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so we will always be with the Lord. The Thessalonian church had evidently had some loved ones who had passed away. And Paul's writing this section of 1 Thessalonians to let them know that there will be a reunion. We'll say more about that in just a second. But notice how this text ends, is that you're going to be with the Lord. Have you ever noticed that no matter where you live, there's always a sense of homesickness? My wife and I grew up in Minnesota and then moved to Nashville to train there, and then San Diego, and then Atlanta, and now Bowling Green. And while there's things that I've loved about all the places that I've lived, there's always a deep sense of homesickness. Because the story of the Bible is that we were created to have union with God, to be one with him, and sin has separated us from him, and so we live as exiles until we're fully with him one day. And in this text, it ends by saying that we're going to be with the Lord. How is God described in the Bible? He's the God of all comfort. He's the light of the world. He's the good shepherd. He's a refuge for the oppressed. He's the perfect Father. He's the God of peace. He's the God of grace. He's our Redeemer. And we get to be with Him forever. One of the ways that the Bible just, as a noun, describes God is that God is love in 1 John. You know that all the love you've ever experienced in this life, all the love that you guys show one another, is a dim hint, and it's a dim shadow of the love that that person first learned from God. God is the influencer of all love in the world. In fact, in Exodus chapter 34, when God is revealing His glory, the Lord steadfast and merciful, all that, and He's showing Moses His glory, and He reveals it through His character, what's the big reveal about God's character in that text? That He has steadfast love. No other God has ever been like that. And you know what's going to happen to those who don't know the Lord on Judgment Day? Is all the love you never deserved, all the love that you experienced is going to be sucked out of your life, and you're going to be cast into hell. But for those who are right with God, they're going to be with the one from whom all love you've ever experienced has emanated. That's the hope for the Christian. And it's not only that we're going to be with the Lord. This text also does want us to be encouraged to know that we're going to be with these other people that have passed on. In fact, it says we're going to be caught up together with them. Notice the language in this passage, that the dead will rise. It talks about words like we. You know what Buddhism teaches? Buddhism teaches that when you die, you're like a dewdrop going back into the ocean. That you, in other words, get absorbed back into a bigger reality, but you no longer get to be you anymore. You're absorbed. You know what the Bible teaches? Is that you always get to be you. You will always be you. With the Lord, perfected with the other ones who have died in Christ. Have you ever heard brethren say before that if we can't get along on earth, how are we going to get along in heaven? What's our experience like as far as being loved and loving other people on earth? There's moments where it's really great, and there's often times where love on earth still leaves something lacking. Love on earth is agonizing. You want to know why it's agonizing? We want people to love us for our own sake. Have you ever known somebody that was kind of like a business person and they just used you as a stepping stone for a sale, or they just used you to try to get connected to somebody else, and you felt like they acted like they loved you, but it wasn't genuine? We want to be loved because we want to be loved for who we are. We want love to be mutual. Have you ever wanted to love somebody, not even romantically, but just like be friends with somebody, and they wouldn't mutually express it back to you? You want to know another reason why love on earth can be agonizing is because we can only be as happy as the ones that we love. I remember when Samantha was pregnant with Asher, our firstborn, that there was a woman at the church in California named Lisa Adams, and she said as soon as that kid's born, you're only going to be as happy as that kid is. You know what I mean by that? There's people in your life that you love, and as much as you can smile in the moment, there's still going to be pain if people that you love deeply are not doing what's right. Love is agonizing in this life because we want to be able to love without ever having to say goodbye. Talking about funerals, talking about times where you move and leave one state and go somewhere else and having to say bye to all the people at that church. Love is agonizing. So when this text says that we're going to be together with these people that we even had a sense of agony from, well, like we talked about this morning, 1 John chapter 3, verse 2 says, "Beloved, we are God's children now, and what we will be has not yet appeared. But we know that when He appears, we shall be like Him, because we shall see Him as He is." As agonizing as the love is you've experienced in this world, there's coming a day where everybody you're with will be absolutely perfected. And there will be no agony. You get to be with God, from whom all love flows. And you get to be with other people who have been perfected by the God of love. and you ask yourself, which worldview fits your deepest needs? That you just want to leave the world a better place, even though it's going to crash and burn like that airplane, and I get to help daisies get pushed up one day. Or I get to be with God forever, and I always get to be me with other people who get to maintain their own sense of identity perfected with that God. All of this is possible because Jesus rose from the dead. Had our Savior not conquered the grave, we couldn't be sitting here right now thinking about how our worldview reigns supreme over any other worldview that you could compare it to. This is the one that meets our deepest needs. You ever seen bumper stickers or coffee mugs or t-shirts, or seen somebody post something on Facebook where they say, everything's going to be okay, it's all going to be okay, it's all going to... And maybe you hear that and you go, well, that's just kind of a trite statement, and people are just trying to make me feel good in the moment. Let me say this, and this is something that every Christian has to really believe. If you're a Christian, everything will be okay. Everything ultimately will be okay. Despite whatever health issues you have right now, despite whatever's happening with the economy, whatever's happening with your house, whatever's happening with your cars, whatever's happening within your family, if you're serving the Lord, everything will be okay. And no other worldview can say that. I thank you very much for your good attention. I don't know what we're doing now. Do we have a song? Or do we have a prayer? Is somebody going to close us out? You're going to be up here? All right. I thank you very much for your good attention. Let me just tell you guys what we're going to do the next few days. So tomorrow night, we're going to have a little bit of a pivot from what we've been doing. We're going to talk about Pontius Pilate, and it will weave some of these things in that we've been looking at. But then Tuesday and Wednesday, we're going to do some more workshop kinds of things that will tie some of this stuff in that we've been looking at on how to use these things in conversations and how to embrace people who have become new Christians. So thank you very much for your good attention, and it's been a blessing to be with you guys.